Well, hello everyone. It's Tuesday, last day of June 2020. We're within our PECS user group. And if you're on and you have questions and you want to chat with me during the talk, let me know. Lori's letting me know that I'm actually on, so the technology is working, which is always exciting for me. So today what I'm going to do is, it's actually going to be the first of a bunch of different talks that I'm going to do over the next several months, talking about some of my favorite, maybe we'll even do some of my least favorite publications. So we'll talk about some of the publications, talk about why I think they're important, what questions they may raise. Periodically, we'll do some other ones, where I might talk about what's challenging or difficult to interpret about a publication. The interesting thing about publications, of course, is just because it's in print doesn't always mean it's, quote, true. But the articles that I'm going to talk about, especially the ones today, they do appear in peer-reviewed journals, which means they've gone through a process where other professionals have looked at the publication, looked at the research design, looked at how it's written, kind of to make sure it kind of makes sense. So we're going to start off with a publication. It's kind of a classic at this point because it was published in 2002. And the lead author is Marjorie Charlotte Christie. And Margie is wonderful, dynamic, supercharged person out in the West Coast. She's done brilliant research for a long, long time. And almost 20 years ago, she let me know she was doing some interesting work about PECS. She published a study in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, and it was a classically designed multiple baseline across 3 learners, single subject design study. Part of what's interesting about the study also is that for probably a decade, it was one of the most, if not the most, downloaded article when it was available on the Java website in terms of a research-based article. So many, many, many people have downloaded it, read the article. When you look at Google Scholar to kind of see what kind of an impact the study has had, this publication has over 850 citations, which means there are 850 studies that reference this particular study. So a lot of people have read it, a lot of people have learned about it, that its importance. Excuse me. So what did they do? They had 3 individuals, all identified with autism. One was a little under 4, one was almost 6, and one was 10 years old. And none of the children had substantial language skills going into the study. And all 3 students, learners, participated through all the phases of PECS. That in and of itself is important. There are probably close to 200 publications in the last 20 years about PECS. Unfortunately, many of them essentially start off from phase 1, go through phase 3, discrimination, and then publish, which is, they don't even go through all the phases for a variety of reasons. Sometimes maybe the learners didn't get there, but most of the time the researchers just stopped. Sorry about that. In this study, they got all the learners through all the phases. Sorry about that. The other interesting thing is the learners not only required all 6 phases, including commenting, they did it on an average of 246 trials. Now, in one sense, you're going, oh, that's a lot of trials. But if you think about it, that's 246 trials across 6 distinct phases, which works out to just about 40 trials per phase. 40 trials, not 40 days, not 40 weeks, 40 trials, which represents extremely rapid acquisition. So what else did they find? Well, they obviously took a look at rate of initiation of requests. They found that went up for all 3. They noted that all 3 increased their spontaneous speech. That has not been something demonstrated in all studies involving PECS. They also noted that all 3 improved in various behavior management issues. And Margie talked to me about trying to publish the study and include all the information they had. And there was initially some resistance, but Margie is a pretty persistent individual, and she eventually got the journal to realize all the data were relevant in terms of what goes on. So here's a study in which three learners, different ages, just about 4, just about 6, 10 years old, acquired all the phases of PECS and improved on vocalization and improved on reducing behavior management issues, even though they were not specifically tied to the use of PECS. That is more of a general improving functional communication, has some side effects that are beneficial. So this is a study that I encourage people to read, whether you're within the field of behavior analysis or not. It's a very powerful study with very good single subject design, demonstrating that what the research was doing was responsible for the change, not some other random factor. So that's one of my favorites, obviously. Another study, which is more recent, this one was published in 2014 in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders, was published by Laura Schreibman and Alvin Stamer. This study is also very important, but it's a very different kind of study. Rather than doing a single subject design, this is one of the rare randomized controlled trials in which a large number of individuals, young children with autism, were randomly assigned to 2 different conditions. Okay, the characteristics of the learners is also very important. All told, there were 39 preschoolers. The mean age was 2 years, 5 months going into the study, so very young children. And the other criterion to get into this particular study was they had to be reported to be using 10 or fewer spoken words. So very young children using 10 or fewer spoken words. And they were randomly assigned to 2 different conditions. Half the group was introduced to PECS, and we knew the PECS training was very well done because they actually involved our team in the training, so we knew the work was at a very high level. We looked at videos and could substantiate the quality of the work. They did their own measures to make sure that the PECS was implemented faithfully. And they were comparing it to something that Schreibman, Saber, and others had previously developed over a long period of time called pivotal response training, which has generated lots of research over the years to be an evidence-based intervention to promote communication and other skills. However, pivotal response training focuses on speech development. That is, they're going to work on speech and vocalization and do that from the beginning. PRT also is heavily involved with parent training. So it's not simply clinic-based, not something you do to kids and hope that parents can take it over. You work with the kids in the clinic and you work with the parents to make sure the parents could implement the strategy, both at home and in the clinic. And they did the same thing with PECS. That is, not only did they implement PECS at their clinic setting, they taught PECS to the parents and taught the parents how to implement PECS. So what happened? Well, 6 months later, almost 80% of both groups were using more than 10 words. However, there was no substantial difference, no statistical difference between the two groups. The youngsters in the PECS group, they now averaged as a group 83 words, 83 spoken words after 6 months. 3 months later, when they did a follow-up, those individuals in the PECS group were now speaking about 120 spoken words. That's an enormous change. The youngsters in the PRT group essentially were demonstrating the same speech conditions. Now, one of the problems with the study is that there was no control group. There was not a, you were assigned to PECS, you were assigned to PRT, you were assigned to a control group. There was no, they were on a wait list and then assigned them later on. It was just, you're in one group or the other. And in part, this was because Laura Schreibman, Northern Stamer, and other researchers involved in the development of PRT were very confident that PRT would be much, much more effective than PECS. This is not my interpretation. This is something Laura has said in public at conferences. And so when the results showed no group differences, scientifically, some people then would say, well, there was no difference between the two, so we could ignore it, except the magnitude of the change of the kids in the PECS group. Again, this is very young children using fewer than 10 words, averaging fewer than, as a group, far fewer than 10 words, within 6 months acquiring over 80 words, and 3 months later averaging 120 words. As far as I know, no other study involving AAC, augmentative alternative communication from any modality, sign, pictures, devices, has produced that big a change in speech production over 6 months with a large group of children, 19 students, especially that age. So this is a dramatic change. Okay. This study also is starting to circulate. It has over 100 citations if you look at Google Scholar. There's another interpretation which I find interesting. Excuse me a sec. If you start PECS with a group of children, 19, 20 children, will they all acquire speech? And the answer is no. But reality also will say that if you take children of that characteristic, young children with autism, with fewer than 10 spoken words going in, will all of them acquire speech, even if you work directly on speech? And the answer is no. If anybody promises that all the students will acquire speech, you should just say goodbye to them. No one can do that. No one can guarantee a child with that behavioral profile and that age will acquire speech. But the interesting thing is, essentially the same number of children in both groups did not acquire speech. I think it was 3 learners in each group. Okay, but consider this. you have a child in a program and you're focusing on speech. That's all you're trying to do. Get vocalization going, get sound blending going, get speech going. And after 6 months, there are no spoken words. Well, what functional communication skills does that individual have? If you've only been working on speech and you have no speech, they have no improvement in their overall functional communication skills. What about the students, the learners, actually learners, preschoolers in the PECS condition? Well, again, not all of them acquired speech, but all of them acquired some PECS skills through discrimination, which means even the children who did not have speech still had some functional communication skills. Now, again, this study is set up as either or. Either you're in the PECS group or you're in the speech group. And what Lori and I have been saying for years and years, that is not our perspective. We don't say if you're going to do speech, you're going to ignore pictures, or if you're going to do PECS, you will ignore speech. Lori's a speech language pathologist. Of course, we were going to work on trying to get speech going, especially with children this young, even if we were working on PECS. So the issue here is if you're working on both, you're working on PECS, you're trying to promote speech, you know the PECS is going to promote that functional communication. Does it guarantee speech is going? The answer is no. But if it does, and it looks like the same proportion of children were acquiring speech at a high rate in the PECS condition, then you have a good combination. You have a safety net built in. If you're going to do 6 months of speech and nothing happens, you're going to look back and say, gee, we're not in a different place than we were 6 months ago. Whereas if you started with PECS and speech, then you have just as much speech 6 months later, and you've got functional communication as that safety net. Okay, so important study. Look that one up. Again, 2014, I'm pretty sure the link is being provided in the chat area, so I appreciate that. So another study that Lori and I have always enjoyed is related to a question, an issue that many people raise with pictures. The argument goes, if someone's going to use pictures, quite frankly, whether it's PECS or pictures on a device, then the individual's repertoire, communication, is going to be limited by the pictures in the book. If there's no picture of something in the book, then he can't ask for it. And so people view that as the big criticism of picture-based communication systems. How can you ask for something if you didn't put the picture in the book? Well, there's a parallel issue for kids who learn to speak. That is, kids are acquiring speech and acquiring vocabulary, and guess what? Many children will end up looking at something at a store, and there's a toy that they want, or an action figure they've never seen. What do? They don't just go, because, oh, gee, I don't know the name of the word, so I'm just going to grunt. What they'll do is they'll use all the other words they have. It's the tall man with the red cape and the white hat. Okay, they'll name all the other features or some of the other features to get somebody to understand what they want and later on learn the name. Well, there was a graduate student, Julie Marco, student of Nancy Neef, and in 2006, they did a publication also in Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis called a preliminary analysis of teaching improvisation with PECS to children with autism. Improvisation, meaning that they were working with students. There were 2 boys, one was 5, one was 4, both had autism, both had used PECS and had also learn to use attributes within a sentence structure. So not only could they use a sentence structure to go, I want cookie, I want ball, they could also ask for a thing by their color or their shape. And so when they were presented with something that they didn't know the name of, for example, Lori had done this years ago. There were some students who clearly wanted a Pop Tart, but did not know the name Pop Tart and did not have a picture of a Pop Tart. But they could ask for a brown cookie, a square cookie. They could describe the shape, kind of do it was edible, if you will, use cookie as a descriptor or cake or something else on a description of the color or the shape, and were thus able to ask for it. So children in this particular study were able to request items that they did not have an identical picture for that item. They can generalize it to new situations, new vocabulary. Okay, so this issue of, well, if he doesn't have a picture, he can't ask. Sorry, that's just a poor analysis. That's people trying to complain about something in a situation to ridicule, complain about PECS, and don't do a full analysis. Obviously, children who use speech or sign will run into the same situation. I'm not sure there was a study, but I am absolutely convinced that children with sign will do the same thing. They see something they don't know, they'll make signs, including the attributes, related to features of the thing they want. Later on, they might acquire a brand new sign that sums that whole thing up. So this issue of improvisation can be taught, just like creativity can be taught. Improvisation can be taught with PECS. A follow-up study was done a few years later in 2009, also a job by Ben Chabane and others, in which they demonstrated that you could teach parents to do this. So they also involved two boys with autism, but they demonstrated that you could have parents become the trainers. So it didn't require special training by professionals in order to teach the skill. You can get parents to teach improvisation and get that same generalized requesting into novel situations. Okay, so don't allow people to limit their interpretation of what kids on PECS can do. Obviously, we are responsible for expanding that repertoire and vocabulary, but you cannot anticipate always the next thing the child wants. And that's okay. Create situations in which that improvisation could take place. In part, this is one of the important reasons that we do not suggest take a photograph of every single thing, every single cookie he likes, every single toy he likes. We would rather you start using a generic picture that essentially represent cookies, and then teach the kids to describe, well, which cookie do you want? Do you want the round cookie, the square cookie, the long cookie, the flat cookie, the sugary cookie? What is it about the cookie that you want? The same is true for other materials. Try not to have a one-to-one correspondence. Yes, Lori has noted that one of the youngsters asked for flat cake, which is a pretty cool descriptor. All right. Obviously, just as a by the way, this issue of improvisation, even though these are publications about PECS, I don't want to suggest those are PECS lessons. You should teach improvisation to kids using PECS, but kids who are signing, kids who are speaking, kids who are using devices, all those kids should be taught how to improvise. Each of these last two studies also has a nice citation reference. I think both of them have about over 112 citations. So people are well aware of those kind of studies out there. So be bold, be brave, teach improvisation. So, excuse me one sec. The other topic that I wanted to talk a little bit about today was, if you will, not a direct um, PECS skill, but a skill that is important for all learners to use, whether they're using PECS or speech or sign or whatever modality they're using. I think too often what we see are lessons that are very restricted. Somebody kind of thinks, oh, it's 10 o'clock, we're going to do a PECS lesson. And in the next half hour, he's going to ask me 20 times for a pretzel. Deadly boring for the teacher and for the learner. That is not a good way to arrange for any lesson, including a PECS lesson. What we're trying to get people to understand is there are multiple potential lessons within any activity. That is, what am I doing at 10 o'clock? What's the activity that we're doing with a kid who's 2 or 5 or 15? What are the communication opportunities inside of that lesson? What activity? What are the non-communication lessons that are available in that activity? We want, if I have a lesson that involves the ball, what do I do with the ball? I can bounce the ball, I can throw the ball, I can spin the ball, I can kick the ball. There are a lot of things to do with the ball. We can communicate about the ball, I can ask for the ball, I can tell you about the ball. I can listen to your communication. You can say, get the ball, give the ball to Mary, throw the ball over my head. Those are 3 potential lessons, but the other set of lessons that is crucial, especially for kids with autism and other disabilities, is imitation. We know from the research that problems in imitation is one of the earliest features that helps identify autism and distinguish it from other disabilities, including cognitive issues. That is, children with cognitive delays and only cognitive delays tend to still imitate their parents, their siblings, peers. Very young children with autism tend not to do that. So incorporating imitation is extremely important, but again, we would prefer that you not simply isolate it. Let's do 20 trials in a row of imitation and then forget about it for the rest of the day. What we actually want to do is, gee, in this activity that I'm doing at 10 o'clock, what are the available imitation lessons that I can build in, including imitation associated with the objects I'm using in that. So when we think about imitation lessons, there are a variety. Most people begin by focusing on what I just call body actions. You've all seen it. Clap your hands, touch your nose, tap your head, stomp your feet. And it's always been interesting to me. It's like, why do people focus on those actions? Why clap hands, touch that? Why are we doing these body actions? Is it because they're clearly functionally important for kids? I don't think so. There can be functional in some activities, but I think people are doing them because of what I call sort of a false developmental perspective. What we think is, gee, what are the first imitation actions that typical kids are doing? And typical kids around 6 months, 9 months, they're starting to imitate what their parents are doing, maybe what their siblings are doing as well. And guess what? A lot of it involves body actions, playing peekaboo, clapping, maybe pointing. Okay? But why are we working on those with those at that age? Well, at 9 months, I'm sorry, most kids do not have very good fine motor control. They don't manipulate materials and spoons and pens and forks and balls, and they're still acquiring a lot of those interaction with object skills. So it's very difficult to get a 9-month-old to imitate how you're using something. So instead, we work on the things that are available, body actions. But now let's switch to a child who's 3, 4, 5, 6 years old coming into a program, and we go, oh, She's lacking imitation skills. Let's work on imitation. And boom, people go back to those body actions. When why is it crucial to learn imitation skills? I mean, if it were body actions, I mean, yes, I can understand somebody helping a child learn to uh, dance, um, ballet positions, body and space positions. But I don't think that's the main reason we're teaching imitation skills. If I can teach a child to imitate me, then when I hold up a pen or do something with a pen, then I don't have to physically guide the child through the action. My teaching life is much easier. If I can show somebody, put your thumb pointing down the golf shaft, put your other hand and point both thumbs down the golf shaft, whether I say it or I can show it, I say, do this, they can do it. Wow, again, I don't have to do that physical assist. My teaching life is easier. So we see a lot of people working on imitation, and I see a lot of lessons that talk about imitating object use. But then we run into another problem. And it's not a, if you will, a teaching problem as much to me as a logical issue. What I sometimes see is somebody do something like there's a ball on the table and there's a pen on the table. The teacher picks up the ball and bounces it on the table. And the child picks up the ball, bounces it on the table. Teacher picks up the pen and scribbles. The child picks up the pen and scribbles. And now we say the child has learned to imitate actions with objects. No, they haven't. Or maybe they have, and maybe they haven't, but that lesson using a single action with each item doesn't demonstrate I'm actually looking at what you're doing. If I'm a child and the only thing I ever do with a ball is bounce it, the moment I see you select the ball, that's all I have to watch. You picked up a ball, I'm going to pick up a ball, and what do I do with the ball? I bounce it. The only thing I do with a pen is scribble with it. You pick up the pen, I reach for a pen, and now I do what I've always done. So we may be seeing selection of object, which is a crucial skill. And it is to be taught before how to use an object, what to do with an object. That is clearly imitation of object selection is important. I pick up the pen, you pick up the pen. I pick the ball, you pick up the ball. I pick up a hat, you pick up a hat. But what do I do with them? Now you need at least two actions with each object. That is, sometimes I pick up the ball and I spin it. Sometimes I pick up the ball and I dribble it. Sometimes I pick up a pen and I make scribbles. Sometimes I pick up the pen and I make dots. Now, when the child watches me, not only do they need to watch which object I selected, they need to watch each action, because now there are two potential actions. Picking up the object does not tell the child how to use it. They have to follow through with, what am I doing? So now modeling the action is in addition to modeling the selection. So I pick up a pen and scribble, he picks up the pen and scribble. I pick the ball and spin it, he picks up the ball and spin it. I pick up the pen but now make dots, he picks up the pen and makes dots. I pick up the ball and bounce it, he bounces. He is now doing both, watching what I've selected and watching what I'm doing with it. So in your lessons, when you're creating a lesson about imitating action with objects, you must make that logical grid. Two objects with two actions. Unless you do that, you do not logically know what is controlling the action. It may simply be the history and not the current model. So yes, it's a little bit more complicated complicated than many of us are doing. But again, if we put on our thinking hat, we'll do a better lesson. And if you do a better lesson, you spend less time teaching, not more time teaching. Okay, so yes, as there's a comment about generalization off the bat, absolutely. I plan for generalization before I even start my first trial. Generalization is not waiting for me. We cannot teach to mastery and then think we're going to introduce generalization. Generalization is taking place trial number 2 relative to trial number 1. There is no pause in generalization. It's always taking place every single time I introduce a trial. So build for it, plan for it, introduce it early. Think about those variations. So we got a lot of cool people from lots of different places in Romania and Hong Kong, wow, and Wales and Poland, and wow, Brazil, that's cool, that's really great. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and I know the chat box is slow relative to everything else. I'll be patient. If you have any questions or comments, Raina's done a great job of providing links to the 4 different studies. The issue about imitation training is part of our pyramid approach to education training. I should note that most of the research on vocal imitation tends to show that kids need to require imitation of actions before they work on vocal imitation. That was a long time ago, so it's important to think about. Come to Brazil. Maybe in a rowboat. Not yet, not yet. Maybe remotely we'll figure out how to come to Brazil because, sorry guys, I'm not getting on a plane anytime soon. I'm just too scared. It's too crazy out there. But there are other ways that we could get to Brazil and do some training. We would love to do that. Hello from Virginia. Cool. That's not even that far away, but I'm still not going there either. Are there any questions, any comments, any reactions to this conversation? All right, well, I will continue to watch the chat box after I close the session. So if you have questions, please write it there. If anybody wants to email me, that's easy. It's abondi@PECS.com. That's a big surprise. Hello from Ohio. All right, everybody, take care, be safe, keep teaching. Thank you.